A month or so ago, Sommelier Rick Arline, whose wine program I absolutely loved at Auburn, agreed to come on the show, and I'm so incredibly thankful that even amidst a week of political uprising, he was still open to keep the interview. It really allowed us space to talk not just about wine, but to have a candid and very necessary conversation about diversity in the wine industry. Rick is by all accounts an incredibly interesting guy. He's a former pro baseball player who has impeccable taste in music and, dare I say, a competition-worthy beard. Today, he's sharing everything from the unsung historical contributions that the Black community has made to wine and spirits, to how we can widen our perspectives in the world of wine, and why Marvin Gaye may just be the perfect musical pairing for the moment. Plus, he shares the scoop that he's opening his own spot right here in LA. Thanks so much for joining me, Rick. Hey, look, I should give you a little bit of a disclaimer here because the audio situation is not great at my house right now. There's literally helicopters, sirens. It's like a chorus of police activity outside of my house. The National Guard is like parked down the street. So if there is audio interference on my end, I apologize.
No worries. We live in times where that's going to be a thing for a while, I think. So I think that's forgivable over here. So.
Which is also why I'm so thankful that you're taking the time to, chat with me. It's obviously not, it's a heavy time, I think, for everybody, but particularly I imagine for you, you're a Black man working in America. So I just, I really want to thank you for doing this in this moment.
No worries. Thank you for giving me the space and the platform to be able to speak my mind today. So I really appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Of course. Normally these interviews, I run them like a Zoom happy hour. And of course, it's kind of tricky, right? I mean, I'm so glad that you agreed to talk with me under these circumstances.
Not at all.
But, and we could all certainly use a drink right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, facts.
Sent along this beautiful Chapel Down sparkling wine, and I would hate for it to go to waste. So I think maybe it can be kind of cool if you're open to it. There's some sort of intention that you want to share, or, a toast even, as we open this up and toast to, what you're hoping for in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me open this and we can do a little positivity out there.
Woo. It's one of the best sounds in the world, isn't it?
Isn't it? Oh. So joyous. You hear that sound and you're like, it's gonna be a good time,
Oh my gosh. Yes, that is the sweetest sound on earth. It almost sounds like the ocean. I feel like I went a little bit higher than whatever it is, the angel's kiss or whatever it is that we're aiming for, but I have a champagne glass. Should I be doing this in the flute?
Should I be
tasting it in a wine glass?
I do personally, but it's up to you. Everybody's different. And I think there's nothing wrong with the flute. I think the flute is great for what we're drinking. You don't have to switch it out if you don't want to, So okay. I believe in wine glass freedom. I believe that people drink whatever they want. When I'm at home, I don't drink out of wine glasses. A lot of times I drink out of a Duralex tumbler. I don't, necessarily always want to drink out of a wine glass, but I'm all for it, man. Drink whatever you want. It's all good. Drink how you want, whatever you want.
I love songs like you. Yes, that's the way. It's just like, don't stop fussing over things. Just make sure it tastes good.
It's not that deep, man. It's all good.
Exactly.
The flute totally works with things like this because it has this great effervescent quality. Something like champagne with a lot of age or sparkling with a lot of age, I would want to drink out of a wine glass personally. But the flute, nothing wrong with the flute. Totally, it works. It serves its purpose, which is to keep the bubbles in the glass and keep everything bubbly and fresh and delicious. So I'm all for the flute too. They both are good. How about there? But I'm drinking out of this beautiful Riedel wine glass. Cheers. I want to raise this toast for positivity and for understanding. So this is because we go forward in 2020, more positivity and more understanding. So cheers.
Cheers to that. Oh man, we could really use a little bit more of that, right? We're all kind of just climbing on top of each other and kind of policing each other in a time where, gosh, I think we could all just really use a break. And if your intentions are good and it's coming from the heart, I respect that,
2020 has been rough on all of us. So I think we can all come out of this and be like, oh man, can we just put this all behind us and be a better society and better people across the board? How do we get to that point? By listening more and talking a little bit less. So
that is so beautifully said. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I've been lucky enough to have friends reach out to me from around the world, which is great. I've had people from Canada and Spain, France, Portugal, and Germany reach out to me. So that's pretty cool. Knowing people are thinking about you in these difficult times it's very interesting. It's really, really terrifying that this thing happened in broad daylight, and it took all this time for people to be held accountable. The sad part about it is seeing images of it happening over and over and over and over again. It's enough to give you PTSD. It really is something that's truly frightening in this day and age. We live in the information age. We've never had more information available to us at our fingertips than at this point in time. But at the same token, it's really frightening at the same time to be able to see that over and over and over and over again. So yeah, I kind of had to take some space away from the constant inundation of images of death, and I just kind of had to get out of it, and turn off my phone and stop watching the news and get out of town for a little bit, which is what I did. So
yeah, that's so important to take those moments of, I guess, they call it self-care, whatever it is. Mental health is just, it's really hard to create a separation, especially when it's something that's so much a part of like your experience, I imagine. It's difficult for all of us to watch, but when it's like, oh my God, that person could literally be me. That could be me.
Yeah,
today,
totally.
Tomorrow, the next day.
Yeah. I totally understand. A lot of Black men have gone through this. We all have this experience, this shared experience, which is horrible encounters with the police. I'm, physically a big guy. I'm 6'2", I'm 200 pounds. I've definitely had images with the police, and they've definitely been rough with me. So yeah, I can totally, I can completely and totally, empathize with this situation that these other men have gone through. We all have been there. We all have stories, all of us.
Especially when you're an athlete, it compounds it. And men in general aren't exactly taught to be open.
Not at all.
You're meant to be, strong and a tough guy. Do you think this is maybe going to open up a conversation about those experiences?
I think so. I think that's definitely happening now. I think it's long overdue. I think men in general do not want to talk about this stuff. Feelings of, whether it be, anxiety or feelings of, stress or things that are awful that happened to you. Men, the culture of manliness does not really allow for that. And the culture, and a lot of athletes does not really allow for that. You fight through the pain, you deal with it. You are constantly feeling like you have to support the team and not speak up, and that's the feeling for a lot of men in restaurants as well.
I was just going to say that
the overlap has been there.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you, but yeah, it's very much that sort of militaristic mentality. Like you work really hard, you play really hard as well.
Totally. You go to work and you put the pedal to the metal and you make it happen, and you leave that night and you repeat. That's the culture. So that's, yeah.
Do you think it's a little bit harder even for you to deal with now because you're not working full time and you're kind of having to be alone in these, I shouldn't say alone, but with these thoughts and experiencing news, not being able to kind of disconnect and go into work and serve other people? I imagine you love doing what you do and serving people and being around people. Is it hard to not have that distraction?
Absolutely. It's been interesting because I've never had this much time off in my life. So it's caused a lot of self-reflection, which is great, but also you're constantly, in a space where you're dealing with this stimuli. And it can be damaging, to a lot of, speaking with other friends of mine, it can be really, really damaging to all of us in a dark place. So it's been, very, very difficult the last couple of weeks dealing with this. First, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and now, of course, George Floyd. It's been really, really a difficult couple of weeks if you're Black in America. So it's, I
can only imagine, and I can only try my best to empathize, but I don't know what that is like. And I just, I really do hope that this brings about real, true, and lasting change, because it's just been a long, you mentioned, Ahmaud and Breonna and all these things. It's like, but you and I were talking a little bit earlier. I was just watching Becoming, and Michelle Obama was like rattling off a list of, 15 different young men. They're like 16-year-old boys. It's just like, this stuff has been happening, and it's been happening since the beginning of our country. Like, I just really hope that this wakes everybody up and just really does shake us at our core, which it seems like it has. I know even last night for me, I did the little go outside with your flashlight and shine it up in the sky for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And that is a long time. It really made me realize how long. Oh my God. It's like, okay, 8 minutes, 10 minutes goes by so fast when you're, sipping wine with friends, but my word, that is a long period of time. And it just very sobering. You defy what the traditional vision, I guess, of a sommelier is, which is kind of like a nose in the air French dude.
Yeah.
And also you used to play in the minor leagues. So like, how the heck did you come to your career?
It's a crazy story. I came home after everything was over, and I was living with my parents, and I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. I'd worked in restaurants in the off season. I'd worked in them in high school and beyond. So I was working at a restaurant, at a friend's family's restaurant. They had a small wine program, and one day the bartender / manager quit, and I was quickly promoted to waiter to bartender, and I also took charge of the wine program. So literally I was thrown into it. I had to start reading books right away. And a couple of months later, I really took it seriously and started reading very seriously, and tasting a lot of wine, traveling a little bit, and figured out this is what I wanted to do. Nobody ever told me that this was a career path that was viable for me, and so I had to figure it out on my own. And that meant, doing whatever it took, whether it was, working part-time in a wine shop. I did that. I just traveled a whole bunch and drank a lot of wine with friends. I started an underground restaurant in my house. I did whatever it took, so it was kind of like, it was, a crash course in learning very quickly and learning about wine and pairings and understanding the difference, and understanding the synergy between food and wine. So that was kind of what happened. I had to do with myself. It was a good year and a half of pretty hard work, but I loved it. And I've been involved in wine ever since. I took the intro course for the sommelier exam in 2010 and certified in 2012. So, so now I've been in the industry now almost 10 years. It's kind of flown by.
Wow. So what is that like, the test for people who haven't watched Somm, for instance? Like, what does that training look like?
It's pretty rough. It's a certified exam. It's a full day, and it is a mix of a questionnaire, 50 questions on the test. It can be from all over the world. So, and they can be matchings, they can be multiple choice, short answer sections, a lot of moving parts of that. There is a service practitioner, service like practical. And then there is a tasting portion as well. So at the time when I took it, it was 2 wines. I believe it's 4 now. But it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through. But it was truly worth it because it was a great experience.
It's teaching yourself how to identify, exact flavors and regions of wine, to me was so challenging. I worked at Bonnie Doon, was my first real food job. Yeah, with Randall. It was such a crazy time. The place was still up in the woods. It was very hippie trippy. I mean, as it still is. They've since sold. So I think a little bit of that maybe has been lost and they've moved the location. But it was really fun when we would go on break in the break room, just like you're talking about. There are just books everywhere and you just start pouring through them. The thing I loved the most was that Nez Devon kit that I imagine you guys might use with the little oils in it where you sniff and kind of
I've used those before. They're pretty cool.
Really neat stuff. But my God, it's it's another language for your brain that is not verbal, and it's so challenging. So to see you guys blind tasting stuff and then naming the vintage and the region and then what it is, it's mind-boggling.
It's like working out to me. It's it's totally like an experience, like going to the gym or working out or being in drills or something like that. It's something you have to build up. It doesn't come right away. Very few people I know take to this right away and just run with it. It's like anything else. It's truly one of the most amazing experiences you can do as a wine professional.
When you first entered, did you just feel like a fish out of water? I was like, dude, nobody looks like me. What is going on? I don't belong here.
I never felt like I didn't belong, but I definitely feel like people are staring at you, or they're not really sure what you're doing, and it's kind of this moment where you're like, oh man, this is super uncomfortable for me because I am the only person of color in this room. Wine in general is extremely Eurocentric and it's very male centric. So it's a lot of white men in rooms. In general, that's beginning to kind of fade away now. We're seeing more women, more people of color. It's long overdue because this industry is white as hell and it is male as hell. So we are seeing a lot less of that now, thank God, because new perspectives are great. Women are amazing in this business, and people of color have been in this business since the beginning and just now beginning to make some inroads. It's a tough industry to be in if you are sensitive to things like that, because you will be the only person of color in that room sometimes. And you have to the standard is higher for you. You don't have the ability to go out and be like, okay, I got drunk last night. People are going to look at you differently. So standard is much higher for you because it's a different world for you. It's very much a boys club still. And some of that's going to fall away, luckily, in 2020.
Yeah. Do you hope that you might inspire some, younger kids of a new generation to be like, oh my God, wait a minute, that guy's doing it. Maybe that is an option for me.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love that. I love the ability to talk to people and answer questions. And anybody who's ever asked me a question, I'll be happy to sit down and talk with them about it or mentor, or do whatever it takes. I was mentored pretty early on by people who have faith in me, and I want to be able to pay that forward and pay it back because I think it's very important. I know a lot of people in this business who've mentored other people, and I love that. I think there should be more of that across the board. It's a tough industry, and it's the more you know and the more people you know, the better at it you'll be.
Right.
The more successful you'll be.
Right.
I definitely think that there's a lot of talented young minority kids out there that would be amazing in this business and just have not had the opportunities, that have been presented to other people.
Totally. And it's just like, I wonder, mentorship is obviously such a huge thing. It's something that we're talking about right now a lot in the food media as well, because we have a huge diversity problem. Oddly enough, it's a white girls club. It's one of the few places that is dominated by women. But, we do talk about mentorship quite a bit. I would love it if there were more, community college outreach programs that were getting to students who are like, look, I want to learn a trade. Like, I may not have the money to go to USC or whatever it is, but I've got an interest in this. And there are so many different ways to enter the industry across the board. It doesn't have to be as a som, or doesn't have to be a chef. Like, you could be a caterer, you could be in marketing, there's so many different avenues and arenas. I just think it's kind of maybe tapping into a different pool than we've traditionally tapped into. Kind of breaking the mold as to what that path maybe looks like. I mean, I don't know what that would look like for a som if there are other opportunities to kind of break these barriers aside from mentorship. What do you think? What do you see?
I think the beverage world is super interesting. There's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of pathways to go. You don't always have to be a som. You can maybe, there's lots of opportunities in craft brewing. There's lots of opportunities in distilling. We've been in this industry in beverage since the very beginning. The first celebrity chefs were Black. They were, James Hemmings, who worked for Thomas Jefferson, who was his, mistress's brother in this weird situation. Sally Hemings was his mistress. He sent her brother to Paris to go learn to be a French chef and came back and had this knowledge of food and wine, and then later on became a brewer. So we've been involved in beverage since the beginning of this country. Also, look at Jack Daniel's. The Jack Daniel's distillery is actually the recipe and the method comes from a slave. Jack Daniel's is a slave, nearest. So we have been in this business for a long time, and the visibility just has not been there. And I think there's a lot of avenues and opportunities for people of color now that there didn't exist in the past. And we just have to, the visibility is important because people have to know that this opportunities are available to you if you want them, and that you can make an impact in this business too. You don't have to be, a white guy to do this. You can be, a woman, a person of color, and these opportunities are available to you too. It's important to highlight that as well.
Totally. That's so interesting about Nearest. I didn't realize I love Uncle Nearest whiskey. I imagine.
Yeah.
Did he then leave Jack Daniels and then start his own thing? Is that how that happened? Or
No, Uncle Nearest is a sub kind of product from the Jack Daniels distillery. It's the original recipe of Jack Daniels. So it's charcoal filtered, which is something that the African slaves brought from Africa. Was just distilling there first, distilling, existed in Africa in for colonial times, along with beer brewing. Beer was more prevalent there than wine. So it's something that they brought from Africa. And so it's been, it's a recipe that was taken from them because, didn't belong to them. They couldn't patent a recipe.
Right.
So yeah, that's the original recipe for Jack Daniels, which is Uncle Nearest.
Oh my goodness. This is why we need to teach more Black history in schools, not just 1 month. Oh my God. I would have been fascinated to learn about that. You know what I mean? That's so cool. Yeah. I had no idea the charcoal filtering. Fucking wild.
Yeah, it's a trip, right?
Yeah. Really cool. Look, I think what you were doing at Auburn, and I imagine what you're going to be doing in the future is kind of tapping into these really cool wine regions. And there's like diversity represented there as well, in terms of not just being this very Eurocentric perspective on a wine menu and a wine program. Where are some places that you are really excited about right now in terms of wines around the world and even here domestically? Sure.
I'm super excited to talk about Texas and Hill Country there. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of really interesting wine coming out of there. And Texas Hill Country is the second most visited wine region in the United States after Napa Valley. And I think a lot of people, I didn't realize that, did you? I learned that out today doing research. It's pretty crazy.
Oh my God, Rick, you're blowing my mind.
Kind of makes sense, right?
It does. It does.
It makes sense. It's in the middle of the country. Texas people like to drink and they like their wine. So yeah, go for it. It's right there. It makes sense,
Yeah, there's a great restaurant scene in Houston, and
absolutely. There's been Austin has a great restaurant scene, so it makes sense for people to kind of get out of the state and go to Hill Country to go and taste some wine and eat some amazing food. It totally works. But I'm excited to taste Tempranillo from there because I think the climate is super just complementary to the grape variety. It's warm. It's like a lot of sunlight. It's a grape variety that thrives in hot weather. So it kind of makes sense. Pairings is the winery there that makes some pretty kick-ass Tempranillo. Excited to taste that stuff. A couple of years ago, I was pretty blown away. Had the structure of Tempranillo, which is a tad lighter than what you find in Spain, but very, very good. So a really big fan of Texas Hill Country wine. There's been a lot of interesting stuff coming out of there. So keep your eye on that region.
I'd love to try that with the BBQ. But that sounds amazing with the barbecue. I feel like, the Tempranillo I had when I got to travel around through the Rioja in Spain, which was like the dreamiest road trip ever. But thinking about it, I'm like, wait a minute, that is kind of like Hill Country in Texas. And Extabari, that was like the perfect pairing of Tempranillo, is like that smoky, the char on all the meats and like everything was smoked, and the Tempranillo was so good with it. So I imagine Texas barbecue, some brisket, some burnt ends with some Tempranillo.
Brisket, totally hot links. Let's go. That sounds amazing.
Yes. Take me there now. Right now.
Seriously. So good.
That sounds so good. I forgot also, we got so excited about chatting. We didn't even talk about Chapel Down, this beautiful sparkling wine from England of all places.
From England.
What?
Yeah, from Britain, from England. I was in Virginia a couple of years ago. I was talking to, not to name drop, but I was talking to Jancis Robinson. And,
hello. That's a name you drop, Rick. You can drop that.
She was sitting next to me at a dinner. We were talking. It was very, it was pretty cool.
Wow. That's a story to tell the grandkids right there. Wow.
Yeah. So she and I were talking, and she told me, she goes, sparkling wine from England within 10 years or so is going to be on par with some of the best in the world. It won't be champagne, but it'll be really, really good. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. She's absolutely right because she's Jancis, so of course she got it right. So this is from
Chapel Down. Else. Yeah.
No. Chapel Down is a great winery here in England, in Tetterden, which is in Kent, in the English countryside. England has a lot of geographical similarities with Champagne. Chalk on the soil, cool climate, not a lot of sunlight. So you're going to get grapes that have a lot of acidity. And that acid is for making sparkling wine. And so this is Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, a little bit of Meunier. So champagne grapes made in England. Chapel Down is an extremely modern winery. They've been around I want to say less than 20 years, probably 15 years. So they are very modernist in their approach. This wine is very fresh. It's very fragrant. It's vibrant. It has a lot of, freshness. And it's just like a very fresh take on sparkling wine. Champagne has a great yeastiness component to them. It doesn't really have that. This is more that great zesty, fresh, vibrant, a lot of acidity thing going on here. Super clean.
I love that. The acid factor is so great. It's very dry, which I love. You're right. It doesn't have that like bready nature of champagne, which I do also love that. But I really kind of enjoy that like zest of like a lime zest or something. It's nice. It's really good. How much would this be? This bottle, this Chapel Down non-vintage
it's about $30.
Oh, whoa!
It's about $30. Yeah,
that's steal.
It's not expensive. But it's excellent.
So good. And I love your pairings. They're always so much fun. So I love fried chicken and champagne. So I like naturally go to that, but I feel like this has some different qualities to it that might be fun with some other options. What do you reckon?
Absolutely. I think, when I look at potato chips, like these salty, ruffly potato chips, like Ruffles, I'm all in on that. That sounds amazing. They're like just enough to kind of wipe away some of that great fattiness and that great saltiness. Just a great pairing with anything potato chip wise. Also, the traditional British food like fish and chips. Of course,
yes.
Like all day with this fish and chips and some mushy peas. Fantastic here as well. Great to go. Is to go with fish and chips to clean your palate, and has a little bit of that citrusy component there as well. So great for fish and chips as well. Or as well, we also have the chip buddy, which is another traditionally British food. It's basically French fries on bread with butter. So,
oh my God. How British is that? Oh my word. They're the only ones that love carbs and fried food more than we do. It's like anything that's like white and beige foods.
Pretty British.
But also that's like a hangover cure right there. You have some bubbles in the morning with some carbs, carbs and carbs
Amazing.
and carbs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of fish and chips. Yeah. That sounds so freaking good. I have to tell you, one of my like real big treats is sometimes, I try to make it a tradition if I can. New Year's Eve, I do Ruffles with caviar and champagne. Oh boy, it's a
Ruffles
real
are like
treat.
The perfect chip. They have like the perfect amount of crunch. They're just salty enough. They're just oily enough. Like people always ask me like, what are all these things that you like to eat with all these high-end foods? I'm like, give me some Ruffles and a bottle of champagne. I'm good. Having a great time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We're on the same page, Rick. You're speaking my language. Paint a picture for me of where this is located in Kent, because it sounded pretty spectacular.
From what I understand, I've never been to this winery, but it's pretty remote from what I understand. And it's like, I think it was a sheep farm they converted. And it's a really, really, kind of remote area, but that is, really, really beautiful. And there's cliffs and there's like coast of the Atlantic Ocean. And there's, so when I understand, it's very, very breathtaking.
LVMH is doing some serious investment there as well.
Yeah.
Really
climate change has really allowed the British to be able to grow grapes. They've been making wine a long time. Most of it sucked. So climate change has really allowed the English to be able to be a player on the scene for making wine. That was not a thing 20 years ago. They couldn't be, there's no way they could make wine at this scale. So, climate change is horrible. It's awful, but it's good for the wine industry for certain places that are cool climate. Germany, Austria, and England are the three I think of the most. Switzerland as well.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so weird to think about buying property on spec for that sort of situation. It's like, where will it be 10 degrees hotter? It's sort of got that like cloud cover that you want. I don't know. It's sort of coastal Mediterranean. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, it's such a weird time, but also it's benefiting these guys. I mean, you and I were also chatting about Brazil, which blew my mind because I always think of Brazil and you think of everybody running around in thongs and it's like hotter than blazes in more ways than one. They're making wine down there now?
They've been making wine for a while. And I mean, it hasn't been great a lot of the time, but there's a couple wineries that are doing really, really great stuff. Okay, so the producer I was thinking about was Kavgaisa. They're from Brazil. This is from Serra Gaúcha. It's mostly Chardonnay here, and a little bit of Pinot Noir from Serra Gaúcha, and then Brazil, which is kind of closer to the ocean there in the country. So Kavgaisa, if you ever are looking for sparkling wine from an unusual place, look at Brazil. Sparkling wine is really, really excellent.
Is the climate a little bit cooler there where you were speaking about?
I think it's pretty warm across the board. I just think that the coastal influence from the ocean will give it a little bit of a cooling climate influence as well.
So interesting. Look, I got to say, I really just want to go on a road trip through Texas at this point and like go explore the Tempranillo. It's so, oh man, I feel like this is going to be the year of the great American road trip, you know? Okay. So tell me about Virginia though. That's interesting.
Virginia's, Jefferson was one of the first people to bring cuttings back from runway regions he liked. He brought cuttings back from Bordeaux. He brought cuttings back from Piemonte. None of them stuck, fortunately. But he was really a big proponent of viticulture in the U.S. So he did plant a vineyard behind Monticello. So there's actually an AVA now called Monticello AVA.
Oh my gosh, I've been to Monticello when I was a little kid, and I do now. I'm thinking back of like the farm was so cool.
Yeah, the farm is super cool. He, I think, had one of the largest collections of Madeira on Earth at the time. They've kind of unearthed his whole selection of port Madeira and stuff that he bought over the years, which is pretty interesting. There's a great winery there called Barbersville, which is the Monticello AVA, which is in just north of Charlottesville, Virginia, a place with a great place now has an awful name attached to it, so it's a great city. I've been there on numerous occasions, but it's had some nasty stuff happen there a couple years ago.
Yikes. If I were a looter in one of those riots, I'd be going straight to Jefferson's Place, getting some of that port, stick a straw in one of the barrels and call it a day.
Just go nuts, right? Barbersville's been making wine a long time. They make Viognier. It's their grape variety that they've been making for a while. So you think of Viognier, of course, somebody that thinks of the Rhone first, of Condrieu, and maybe of Santa Barbara, but the Viognier they make there is extraordinary. Very, very great. I'm not always a big fan of Viognier. It can be a little oily for me. It can be a little dense for me in terms of palate-wise, but the Viognier they make there is very, very good. So if you ever see Monticello AVA Viognier from Barbersville, please check it out because it's delicious.
Yeah, we made a Viognier, late harvest Viognier at Bonnie Doon. It was called Viognier Doux. And I actually still have the bottle. Like, I'll show it to you. I'll pick it up right now. But because he always did that artwork with, Ralph Steadman and all that stuff. It was so beautiful at the time. Now everybody is doing that. But the late harvest Viognier was so beautiful, but it's, I think, more suited if you're going to do it solo on its own and not as a blending grape. I think it's really nicely suited to a dessert wine. That champagne, you had a late harvest champagne that I remember on the Auburn menu, which is so interesting.
Yep. Cartouche Champenois, which is like the red version of champagne. And then, late harvest dessert wines from champagne, which is super interesting. Love that stuff.
I'd never seen that before. And that's so fun. I mean, you just, you think of champagne as being one thing. It's now its own appellation, I think, right? That
it has been for a while. Yeah. It's super cool talking about, Ratafia Champenois is like a byproduct of champagne. It's made on the second pass. So the first pass to make everything from, goes into making champagne. Ratafia is basically whatever's left over. The grapes are raisinated. They're all weird looking. They may not be, to the level. So they just come super sweet and then it's just pressed. And then that's kind of what you get, which is super delicious as well.
Yeah.
So it's great with food.
I actually think that's what this was. It was a second. It's like a what do they call it? Passata or something like that. I think that was what it's called. Pasito. Yeah, that's why it was called Viognier Doux, the second.
Yeah, so it's a second.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, man. It was funny. I was going through and like doing some cleaning this morning and I found my old business cards from there and I was like, wow, this is like with all my stuff from, college books and things like that. It's just amazing how time flies on by. It's so wild that he's still around and doing his thing.
Randall's hilarious. He did a keynote speech at an event I was at a couple years ago, and it was the most meandering and insane speech ever. But it was it was a lot of great information in it.
Yeah.
He is something else. And I think he's a super interesting dude. So he's a cool cat.
A freaking pioneer, man. I will say that much. Yeah. Crazy as the time, and it was like, the first to do the stealth enclosure, and then he's gonna do the Rhone thing, and now isn't he like creating some like clone or new Vitis vinifera or something like?
Yes, he is creating like site-specific vinifera in a lab. It's really, really out there. You should take a look at it because he's doing something that has not been done in the U.S. before. I think maybe in the world. It's super insane, so, but it's a Randall Graham thing. So it will probably work.
Yeah, exactly. I love crazy people who just like dare to dream and are like, yep. Fuck you guys. I'm doing whatever I want and it's going to work.
Do it. We're going to go for it. Yeah, it'll probably work because it probably will.
Totally.
So it's exciting to see. Really is.
So what do you have coming down the pike, Rick? Because I want to follow.
Giving it a little bit of a bump. I am going to be a partner in a new restaurant, in a new space, a wine bar. I can't really talk about a whole lot of it just yet, but please follow me on Instagram, and we'll be able to talk about that in the coming weeks, because it's still kind of coming together so quickly.
I love that. I'm so excited that you're getting ownership over it too, because it's something that happens far too often, that like the creative minds end up being utilized and then you don't have actual partnership in it. So I'm really glad that you have advocated for yourself, and the time is NOW. I can't wait for that. Also, selfishly, I like the fact that it's potentially going to be close to my house. So that's great. I'm like, great. We need a wine bar in this area for sure.
Yeah.
So necessary.
That's cool. It'll be fun. It'll be a kind of a fun space where people can come and drink some cool wine. So in the day, that's what's most important to me.
Totally.
Good wine, good food, good service, good vibes, man.
All the things. Emphasis on the vibe. How about the vibe tribe? What are you thinking? Aside from like the vibe, is there sort of like aesthetically, is there anything you're thinking? What kind of wines do you want to focus on? Are there some points of inspiration restaurant wise?
I don't know if there's really, I've been inspired by so many places around the country that I've been to, in terms of wine bars and restaurants that I've been to that are wine focused. I just want to take a little bit of the best of everything and kind of make this space, a space that's inclusive of everyone, and give everybody a chance to come and drink some cool wine. No matter who you are off the street, if you're a person who knows a lot about wine, you can find a great glass or bottle of wine. Or somebody that doesn't know a lot and wants to learn, come on in. We'll be happy to help you. I think the snobbery thing has got to go. And I think the intimidation's got to go. And I think there's got to be more focus on wellness and making people feel good, and conviviality, rather than the snobby culture of wine that I think has gotten a bad rap, and deservedly so, because it's bullshit.
Word. It's time for that to go, especially now that we come back into like, we just need a little bit of comfort. People just want to chill. I think ultimately also like I've just been kind of craving like just intimacy. Like I don't want like a bunch of people. I don't need crowds. Like I just kind of want to be able to like hang out with a friend, maybe one, maybe two. I don't need to be with a ton of people. I don't want to be like packed to the gills with anybody, but I do want to be in a place where there's great wine, great food, some great music, which by the way, love your taste in music. You should follow him on the gram for all the reasons, to obviously find out about the current project or the upcoming project, but also Rick has a great taste in music. Didn't you used to work in radio from what I was hearing?
Yeah, I worked in radio. Yeah.
Shoot, no pressure. Jeez, Krista. Sarah, edit this episode and make it sound really good. Okay. When was that? Was that before, kind of in between that time of baseball and then Sommelier?
Yeah. My degree is in broadcast communications. So I initially got into radio, wanted to be getting into sports, and then had always been interested in music. My dad is a big music guy. So it was kind of a space for me that was important too, was being around music as well. So I always was the guy making playlists in the car, was the guy, that guy, so. Yeah.
Everybody needs a friend that is that guy or gal.
Yeah,
like it's, we gotta have good tunes. It's nothing. Isn't that crazy when you're like, man, this place has everything going on. The people are looking good. The food is good. The wine is good. But then the music is like,
music is whack.
It's too loud. And it's like, fuck, that just kills the vibe. It makes or breaks everything.
Yeah,
same with film.
The ambiance is important. It's very important to have that kind of ambiance component. It's really important. That I don't want to hang out in a space that has bad music, whereas I don't. I just really don't. I want to hang out somewhere. If I'm going to spend my money and my time somewhere, it's valuable. So make it count.
Yeah. It also felt like towards in the before times, it felt like there was something. I don't know what was going on, but it felt like there were a couple different restaurateurs, but they were doing a lot of different projects. I'm not going to name any names, but they all seemed to like just blast Biggie and Tupac, which again, I love Biggie and Tupac, but it was like, why is this in this space? And why is it so loud? And like, what's going on? Like, it just felt like that became the thing, and the acoustics were so bad. And it just kind of like, really detracted from the experience rather than enhancing it.
Yeah, the frustrating thing is going to those places and hearing, Biggie and Tupac and Young Thug and Future, and then not seeing a single person of color on the floor, which is really, really weird. Which is like, you're like, okay, like, great, thanks for appreciating the culture, but there's nobody of color in this entire space. It's weird,
Yeah, it is. It's a little weird, but I really do hope, and I really strongly feel that young people seeing someone like you and knowing that it's possible and knowing that, hey, look, you went to school for broadcast journalism. You were a baseball player. Like, you can still do it. It's not something that you have to be, rich with your family, traveling the world, and they don't have to be, dining at Michelin star restaurants.
No.
If they are, great. Like, that's wonderful. I didn't come from that background.
Yeah.
You didn't sound like you didn't come from that background either, but yet here we are.
Not at all.
Get some chapel down.
Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. I had a lot of friends who were lucky, who grew up in that kind of environment and were traveling around the world and going to Europe every summer and that kind of stuff. And the wine was on the table everywhere, and it's kind of they got into wine. And I didn't come from that. I have a different perspective. And I see a lot of wine lists around the country, and they're all kind of written by the same couple of guys, and they all look the same. So I've always been tried to add a different perspective because my experiences are different. And I want to give a little bit of my experiences into the wine lists I create, into the pairings that I make, into the, the experiences that I'm able to curate for people. So that's important to get somebody else's perspective who isn't, this monolithic, ideal of what a sommelier could be.
Mm-hmm. It is. And it translates to that, you should know as well, because it's cool to see, like at Auburn, for instance, it's definitely a fine dining establishment. People are probably coming there. They probably may want to have like a traditional champagne, and they may want to have like a Grand Cru or whatever, but you have those things. But then there are also like really fun regions, varietals that I'd never heard of. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm some fancy wine expert. I'm not Jancis, but still I was like, oh, this is kind of fun and exploratory. I'm learning something. And, that diversity in your selection is coming through as well. And that's equally as important, I think.
Yeah, I think it's great to have a different perspective or come from a different place and offer that to a restaurant. And that kind of stuff is super valuable. And it's exciting for people to be able to experience that. I remember when I was first starting out and I was like, I don't know what Sangiovese is, but I'll taste it, or I don't know what, this weird Portuguese wine is, but I'll taste it, but it was kind of, most people were into that. They're like, I don't know what this is, but I'll give it a shot, Mm-hmm. So let's, it's always important for me to kind of, if I'm learning something and I'm jacked about it, I'm geeked on it, let's show it to people too. Let's get everybody involved, because my growth is everybody else's growth, and vice versa. And people come in and they're like, I want to try this. I've never tasted it before. And I'm like, I've never had it either. Let's pop the cork in and taste it together. So
I love
that's
that.
kind of the fun part. This is the back and forth from guest to sommelier,
Rick, you're such an inspiration. You're just really, even through a screen, I'm like, oh, this guy's great. You really are. Hey, so since you love music so much, and we're in this crazy time, what would be like a good pairing of just some like really wonderful music, some really good wine to just get you through it all?
Oh man, my favorite singer of all time is Marvin Gaye. So be able to, I think the great, album to me is What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. It's my favorite album of all time. It's a beautiful record that has a lot of social, issues on it. And it's like this, sang by this incredible man who's an incredible singer. And the music is just so good, and just one of those records you can put on and play over and over and over again. So it's a great kind of record that is very in touch with what's happening socially. I also am a big fan of this other lady. I have her poster here that I had just getting framed tomorrow. And that is...
Oh my God, Sade, shut it down. What a legend. Oh, yeah, that is a beautiful poster too.
This is a first run poster of this album too. So I'm super geeked on this. I got it on eBay. So shout out to eBay for having this. Yeah, so
we all need to just be serenaded by Sade and have some champagne and calm the fuck down.
Everybody, absolutely. If everybody just kicked in and listened to Sade and just relaxed a little bit, we would have a lot less problems. Less conflict in the world. Yeah, definitely more babies, but also but also less conflict in the world.
Well, with that, Rick, I feel like that's a high note if I've ever heard one. So I'm going to say thank you one more time to
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been great. I really appreciate it. So
it's been really cool, and I really do hope that by the time you've got your place up and running end of year, we'll be out of the Rona. I'm going to be doing this in a studio where we can actually be P2P, face to face. Sipping, toasting, listen to some Sade,
I look forward to it.
Yeah. But thanks so much again. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't discuss?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who's reached out to me and everybody who's kind of checked on me in the last couple of weeks. It's been a great, very moving experience. I really appreciate everybody who's looking out for me and other people of color. Thank you for doing that. Reach out to your friends. Look out for your friends. Keep your friends in your heart right now, because we all need it right now. It's been a rough couple of weeks for us, but thank you very much for everybody who's done that. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for opening up to all of us too. Again, I know it's not an easy time, but I just really appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty, and also just sharing something inspiring and positive. So your toast already came true.
Cheers.
Thank you again. Cheers, dude. That's delightful. I think I need to find myself some fish and chips.
Yes, you do. Go get it.
So you guys make sure to follow Rick Arline at Rick Eats Stuff on Instagram, and he will give you all the 411 on his latest spot. And also the guy loves to eat and travel and drink some ridiculous bottles of wine. So if you want to know what to pick up next time you make a little drop, follow along.